Board of Education. We're going to start with a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Mrs. Warner?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mrs. McKeon?
Here.
Mrs. McGowan?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
Here.
Mrs. Wolford?
Here.
Mr. Markera? Here. Mr. Side? Here.
Thank you. We have already met with the Ridge High School student government. We asked them a number of questions and got feedback from them on a lot of topics. So we're now on to the statement of public notice in your agenda. I'd just like to point it out to you. You can read it at your leisure. You'll notice that the board meetings are recorded, and that if you come up to the microphone during public forum, that you please state your name and address and write your name and address on the clipboard. I don't think we have a student representative up here tonight. We already spoke to the students. And that takes us up to item number 8, which is the superintendent's report. And I think Nick wanted to say a couple things before we move those items.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to congratulate those folks that were involved in the recent election. I believe that we are still working off of unofficial election results, but anticipate any change to that. So I see that I saw Mr. Fry was here. Oh, there he is, Mr. Fry. So congratulations to Mr. Fry and to our incumbents, Ms. Shaw, Ms. Woolridge, and also to the two Karens who, although running unopposed, were willing to continue to work with me. So thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with everybody, and I appreciate your service. I know there's a lot of hours, a lot of thankless hours sometimes that go into all the work that you do, and I certainly appreciate it very much, as do the rest of the administration. So I just want to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Would someone like to move items 1 through 4 under superintendent's report? Bev, thank you. Linda, second.
Can we talk about it after we move it? Right?
Yeah, after we move it. Okay, are there any comments or questions?
This overnight trip, have we had this trip before? Or is this a brand new trip? So do they used to go somewhere else? Or they're doing this in addition to what they used to do?
This is new. It's in addition to anything that this group of students might have done before. It's really a first-time thing. Yeah. I think right now she has about 8 students going. They're trying to get a couple more. The reason it's on the agenda now is because in order to do the application process, they have to put in a deposit, and they don't want to put in a deposit without knowing that the board's okay with them taking the trip. So that's the issue. Sure. Right. So I think Susan sent that out, Mike. I don't know if you got it, but let me. Right. So I asked actually for the itinerary here. Let me just grab that real quick. Marguerite Cahill was taking the students on the trip. And I asked her to send that to me. Okay, so the idea of the Model Congress is for the students to have an opportunity to develop a variety of skills. I'm not sure if you got that content, Mike, but so they're working on public speaking, problem-solving abilities, debate skills, teamwork, and expanding their knowledge of how Congress works. She reported to me that not only will the students better themselves in ways that will improve their academic abilities, but they'll also have a chance to meet and work with people that share similar interests. Unlike the congressional debate in Ridge Forensics, the students who attend the Model Congress Conference did not have to audition or be highly experienced to participate. Anyone can join. So it's a little bit different opportunity than they might have through the forensics team. And the students are working on cutting down the costs with doing some fundraising. Since the trip isn't until much later in the school year, they have the opportunity to do that. I also asked her to send the agenda for the whole trip, and she did do that because this is in March. The students would be missing Thursday, March 26th, and Friday, March 27th. It actually goes into Saturday and Sunday as well. But to give you some idea of the agenda, they have registration and a rules overview on the first day with a keynote speaker and opening ceremonies. And then they do committee sessions from 8 to 11 p.m. So they do all the opening ceremonies, the registration, and the rules between 12 and 5:30. Then from 6 to 8 p.m. they have opening ceremonies and a keynote speaker. And then they do committee sessions from 8 to 11 p.m. So they'll be working pretty hard. And on the second day, they do what's called a House full session from 9 to 11 a.m., Senate committee sessions, and then they have lunch at 12. They do a Senate full session from 2 to 5, which includes House committee sessions. They have dinner at 5. They go on more committee sessions from 6:30 to 10. And then they have some fun activities from like 10 to midnight. So they have 2 packed days on the 2 days that they would be missing school. And then on the weekend, they continue with the Senate, the House, and committee sessions. They're working again from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then they have a dance for the kids from 10 to midnight on Saturday night. And Sunday they do some morning sessions and come home around 1:30. They have closing ceremonies from 12 to 1:30. So I did ask her for the details because I realized they were missing a couple days of school, and I want to make sure it was packed with educational opportunity. And they're actually working pretty hard. They're doing like 12-hour days, especially on Friday and Saturday. So it looked like a pretty good agenda to me.
I think it says it's the UPenn
Yes.
Congress, so I'm assuming they're just going to Philadelphia.
Yes. Yeah, Philadelphia. Yep, by bus.
And this is different than Model UN.
It's different than Model UN, but it's similar. It's Model Congress. Yeah.
And which teachers and how many teachers are going?
Marguerite Cahill is going, and I believe one other staff member. Right now they only have like 8 kids. I think they were trying to get some more students to go to help defray some of the costs. Have more kids going, split up the cost of the bus better. And you know, if they get more students, we can look to try to make sure there's more chaperones. We can keep a good ratio.
Parent chaperone?
I don't think there were any parent chaperones set up at this point. No. But I was comfortable. They had 2 adults with 6 or 8 kids. That seems reasonable.
Mike?
I had a comment on the HIV item number 4. Oh, we got a letter from the family, I think, or I just got one today, talking about out-of-school activity. I'm not convinced, nor do I believe that we should be going out of our way to find HIV problems. So I think if they're real, I don't see any evidence that's ever carried into school. It's complicated because there's more than 1 or 2 kids complaining, and there's more than 1 or 2 kids did the activities. So I'm going to vote no on that item, and I just want to let you know why.
Anyone else? Okay, could we have a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin?
Mr. Byrd?
Yes on everything but 4. 4 is no.
Mrs. Smart?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes for 1, 2, and 3, and I'm abstaining from 4 because I wasn't present.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes on 1, 2, and 3. I'm abstaining from number 4.
information, we're going to go down below. Yeah.
Post-secondary report again this year. A lot of this PowerPoint has detailed statistics and graphs as it has had in past years. So it's on my on-course page now if you'd like to download it. I've already sent it over to the Board of Education Board Office so that they can post on their presentations pages as well. And I do believe that you have a hard copy of the board members to this one as well. So my goal tonight is to point out the different highs and the lows and to not nitpick on some of the graphs and things like that you might be able to take a look at a little bit later. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board tonight after the presentation. Quick overview of the agenda, Ridge Class of 2014 snapshot, review of standardized testing, ACT and SAT prep, standardized testing part 2 in the form of advanced placement tests, and then last but not least, college admissions trends and information. So a quick snapshot of the class of 2004. It was a larger class than in 2013. We had 444 graduating students. 97.8 of whom are continuing their education in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a 4-year college, a 2-year college, or some other career education or the like. The SAT scores and the ACT score has also risen, and I will go into that in more detail in a little bit. Part 1, SATs, ACTs, and subject tests. First, a quick refresher of the comparison between the SAT and the ACT. The SAT is an aptitude test, whereas the ACT is an achievement test. Both are accepted nationwide. The test content of the SAT is 3 components: critical reading, math, and writing. ACT has English, math, reading, science, and an optional writing section. Both tests are fairly long, the SAT at 3 hours and 45 minutes, and then if you were to take the ACT with the writing, which would be the closest equivalent, it would be 3 hours and 25 minutes. As of now, the SAT is giving a penalty for wrong answers, whereas the ACT is not. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And scoring, SAT, 200 to 800 in each section for a combined total score of anywhere from 600 to 2400. ACT is a 1 to 36 in each of those sections, and then they have an average composite score. So some of the testing trends to compare us to state averages. We are up in terms of the number of students who took the SATs, and we are just slightly down for the number of students who took the ACTs in 2014. Keep in mind that, again, as I said, the class is a little bit bigger, so it can account for some. Makes more sense for the SAT increase. The ACT, I don't think it's not statistically significant enough in order to be able to make any sort of distinguishing marks between 2013 and 2014. Overall, the state in terms of SATs remained relatively stable, and the ACTs rose between 2013 and 2014. As you know, in the state's performance report, instead of providing comparisons to other schools in our district factor group any longer, they provide a list of peer schools, which they define as schools that have similar grade levels and students with similar demographic characteristics. They still don't get any more specific than that particular statement, which was the same from last year as well. So not only did I list those, I threw in some other comparison districts that I put some statistics in for over the course of the PowerPoint, including districts like Milburn, Montgomery, Princeton, West Windsor, Plainsboro. Those were our former DFGJ comparison districts. So we'll sort of take into account all of them as best as possible. On this slide, we have the college readiness test participation. So students demonstrate college readiness in high school by taking college entrance exams such as the SAT or the ACT and challenging themselves with rigorous coursework. On the left, we have the percentage of students in the 12th grade who took the SAT, averaged with the percentage of 10th and 11th graders who took the PSAT, compared with averages from our peer group and the state. We are on point for the most part with our peer group schools, a little bit below for this round, and we are above the state average for the SATs. The performance reports still don't provide us a peer group average for the ACTs, but we are very well above the state average for the ACTs in students demonstrating college readiness participation by taking the ACTs. I'm going to show all the scores for the test before making some comparisons between SATs and ACTs. For SAT critical reading, we saw a 9-point increase in scores for the SAT readings, which brought us back up to where we were in 2011, which was our 5-year high. We are definitely heading back in the right direction as we saw a more significant gain than the New Jersey point change or the national point change. In math, we have an even greater growth, up 14 points to a high of 611. Over the past 5 years, that is our highest math SAT score. And again, well above the New Jersey point change and the national point change. In writing, up 12 points to 585. Again, sound like a broken record, but in this case, it's quite a good thing when the scores are going in the upward direction. The point, we're well above the New Jersey point change and the national point change as well. For all 3 areas, we've seen much stronger growth than the state and the nation, which is actually down a little bit. Okay, so the state now provides us with percentage of students scoring above 1550 on the SATs out of a scale of 2400. I've listed the top 15 schools in our, right now we're just looking at the state-defined peer group for the moment. These are the schools that were above the peer group average of 64.5. So the range of scores for the peer group that Ridge is currently in goes from 49% to 77%, and the ones listed on the screen are the ones that are above the average of 64.5%. Ridge falls at number 10 in that category. This slide shows you compared to the top 25 public districts in the state. So regardless of the peer group, and this is where you'll see some of our past comparison districts, 10-5, Princeton, Milburn, things of that sort. We are number 22 out of the 600 and some odd districts in the entire state. So putting it in perspective, out of 25, it may not look so great, but again, this is just a small snapshot at the very top of the pack for Ridge. Moving on to ACTs, the average composite score is highest that it's ever been at 26.2. So for those of you who still think in terms of the SATs, which I know I do, that 26.2 equates to just over a 1200 on a 1600 scale of the SATs. The ACT composite score does not include writing, since writing again is optional, so we can't directly compare it to the 2400 scale. So now a comparison between the two tests. For those of you who may have seen the presentation last year, the ACT sort of outranked and outweighed the SAT in all given areas. This year, in math, our SAT score was higher than the approximate equivalent of the ACT. So a 26.1 was our average reading score in the ACT, which is equivalent to approximately a 590. Our students were still stronger in the ACT in that case. Math, it was the SAT, and in writing, it was the ACT. So it's a little bit more of a split at this point. The comparison they're not exact sciences, it's not a direct correlation, but it is the concordance chart that the companies provide for us to give us the best way of comparing the two, which is also, of course, what colleges uses for college admission. I have a little bit more information on the ACTs. As the ACT is an achievement test, not an aptitude test, The company provides benchmark scores in every annual report. So they define the benchmark scores, the minimum score needed on a subject area test to indicate a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher, or about a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in the corresponding college-varying credit-varying college courses. So if a student earns at least a 22 in math, that's the benchmark, that same student will have a 50% chance of earning a B or higher in a college-level algebra course. So the benchmarks have not changed from 2013. ACT has calculated and kept them the same. These particular marks are really helpful for the students who are in the middle third of the class in terms of their GPA, because it kind of provides you with some real-life data which can help to sort of alleviate fears for students who may be uncertain as to how well they're prepared for the college courses moving forward. For the benchmarks, you can see that 58% of Ridge students met or exceeded those college readiness benchmarks in all 4 ACT testing areas. The percentages in each of the sub-areas rose from last year. And again, since the writing section is optional, there's no benchmark data provided. So overall, in all 4, we were down in terms of the percentage because of the number of students taking it, but in the sub-scores, we were up in each area. So I mentioned a few upcoming changes to the SAT in spring 2016. So that would likely be this year's sophomores. The SAT is returning to a 1600 scale. Their essay is going to be a completely separate score. It sounds like that they're changing to sort of match the ACTs a little bit more. They're no longer going to give a penalty for wrong answers, so there's no guessing penalty. They're going to use what they call more common vocabulary. I'm interested to see what their idea of more common vocabulary is, but that remains to be seen. And they're also going to provide sub-scores for every test. So given what I just explained to you about the ACT, it does sound like the SAT is moving more in that direction starting in the spring of 2016. ACT announced a few changes for 2015. They have not said whether or not it will be the fall or the spring. They're going to change their scoring report a little bit. They're going to provide additional sub-scores besides the broken down English, reading, math, so on. There'll be a STEM score, an ELA combined score, so that will be the English, the reading, and the writing together. And they're going to provide something called the Career Readiness Indicator. They're enhancing their writing test. Not totally sure what enhancements they're going to make as of yet. And then they said to stay tuned for changes to reporting in 2016. We are hosting standardized testing night on December 9th at 7 p.m. in the Ridge Pack. Princeton Review are going to come in and really explain these changes more in detail, so that is my shameless plug. If you have an opportunity to come for that presentation, hopefully we'll get more answers to these questions that still linger and still remain about the changes and exactly what it means for students in each class level. So the SAT subject tests, which many of us remember as the SAT-2s, AP students are typically the students that take the SAT subject tests, as some colleges require or recommend those scores for admission and or placement. There are still about 160 colleges who require or recommend them, and students still get to select, for the most part, which subjects they wish to take. A couple of exceptions are if they're applying to specific programs, perhaps like engineering, they may specify that they want a physics and a chem or a math 2 or something like that. Last year, we were able to put together a subject test guidance document, which is still in the counseling department website, and I will be sending out via Friday folder in a few weeks again as a reminder. The curriculum area supervisors got together and they sort of linked what content area, which courses, if it's a course, or which topics cover which subject tests, so that students would have a better idea of which AP courses or honors courses might prepare them to take the SAT subject tests. So in terms of the data for the subject tests, this is the information for the subject areas for which Ridge had 4 or more students testing. In all but the one subject area, the means of the student scores were the same or higher than both the means for the New Jersey and the nation. We are above all the state and national means except for Spanish for this year. So we've definitely seen improvement over last year where there were several content areas in which we were below the state averages. This is one of those graphs that might be better to look at when you have it up close, but it is the 5-year trend for each of the subject areas with more than 4 test takers. Okay, test preparation. A quick review of method test prep. It has over 20 hours of prep for each, the SAT and the ACT, broken down into manageable tasks. If students are not sure as to why a certain answer was correct, they have the option of reading the explanation, watching a video on it, listening to it as an audio file. It tracks student performance. It really has a great wealth of different problems and focus areas for students who kind of wish to take test prep under their own belt and be self-directed learner and utilize this online. It is offered to all grades. It is the second year that we've offered it to grades 9 also, as well as 10, 11, and 12. And you'll see some of the stats here. Now keep in mind the orange is just through October of this year, so we're only talking about September and October. But the rest in blue are for a full school year. So last year the usage with method test prep was definitely down. I put out a quick survey of 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students and parents just to sort of get an idea as to why is it that they're not utilizing this. Long story short, and mostly parents answered, not students, as you might imagine, they basically said that their students were choosing to prep for testing in a different way. Almost half the group said it was one-on-one tutoring that they are providing for their child. 20-some odd percent said it was going to be a class or some small group. Only 27% responded said that their students are using, or if they're a 10th grader, are planning to use a self-directed online program such as Method Test Prep to do their preparation. So that sort of gives us an idea for the future as to whether or not this is something we want to continue to offer students. In the past, we've done the prep at Ridge. We offered College Board online. Presently, we're doing the Method Test Prep. We've done more advertising with it. In the future, I'm going to put together another one of those similar surveys at the end of the year just to see if after the 10th graders sort of have a little bit more of an idea of test prep under their belt, if some of the responses changes. But it's also possible that potential changes to the high school schedule in the future could allow us to embed test prep into the schedule by maximizing instructional time. So I personally think that Method Test Prep is a great program for students who are indeed self-directed enough to use it. I think it is one of the better products out there. I don't know how many students learn best just by sitting in front of the computer and not having someone tell them, okay, now we're working on this chapter, now we're working on that chapter. So it remains to be seen as to what will happen to it in the future. But for the time being, we are planning on keeping it at least for 1 more year. Advanced placement exams, second part of standardized testing. So here we have the percentage of students enrolled in an AP course that actually took the exam. And you'll see that it is lower than it has been in the past 2 years. However, as you will see, the scores are much higher. So what that tells me is that we're getting the most prepared students taking the exams. Also, what it shows, and as a follow-up to the conversation we had with student government earlier, with midterms and finals, in 2012, a student was still able to exempt themselves from end-of-the-year testing if they sat for an AP test. Starting in 2013, that was not the case, so a lot fewer students actually sat and took the test, but it does seem that we are getting the quote-unquote right students to take the tests. Because, and this is the data that substantiates this past percentages, if you're wondering about particular classes, how many students in each particular were enrolled and were taking the exam. So for the New Jersey School Performance Reports, again, for the AP scores, it shows that our students, 60% of our students have taken 1 or more AP courses, and then 56.5 took 1 or more of the exams, and about 45% took at least 1 AP exam in English, math, social studies, or science, which puts us well above the peer average and the state average. Now that's the data from the New Jersey Performance Report. Also from the performance report, we have about 93% scoring a 3 or greater on the exam. But if you use the actual data from AP itself, it's more like a 96%. So I'm not quite sure where the discrepancy was with the information reported from AP to New Jersey, but those are the different numbers that they are reporting. I like the AP numbers better, quite frankly. They have 662 students passing our exams with 5s, 441 with 4s, and 211 with 3s. So that is a really good ratio of overall passing scores for our kids. Of the 1,374 exams issued, 1,314 were passed. Also, 80% got a 4 or 5, too, is how the numbers work out for that. Okay, here's my least favorite slide of the entire presentation. Every year I have to sort of refresh my memory on how to go through and explain the AP Equity and Excellence score. This is the number that gets factored into rankings such as Newsweek and the Daily Beast and things of that sort, so it is important. The AP Equity and Excellence score is the number of AP students per grade level who scored a 3 or higher on at least one AP exam this year, or in this case, meaning last year, divided by the total number of students in that grade. So just over half of all Ridge seniors passed at least one AP exam last year. The 10th grade percentage looks a little bit low at 3.9%, but all of our sophomores who took an exam passed it. There just happened to be fewer sophomores who sat for the exam and a larger overall sophomore class. So that explains the lower 3.9 number for the sophomore year. For the graduating class summary, the orange box, this number indicates that over half the class of 2014 passed at least one AP exam during their high school career at Ridge, so whether that be in grade 10, 11, or 12. Again, these are the trends over the past 5 years. All the sophomores, as I had mentioned, who took an exam last year did pass, despite the lower number from 2013, and in the other two areas we've seen growth. To wrap up the AP information, these charts show the percentage change in the passing rates from 2013 to 2014. So on the left-hand side, we saw improvement in all of those subject areas, which is the vast majority of subject areas. On the right-hand side, most of our status quo, with the exception of Lit, were 0% point change in passing rate, but they were already at 100%. And we saw decline percentages for 4 subject areas: language and comp, Calc AB, Latin, and European history. Despite the small percentage change in passing rate, the number of students who didn't pass those exams were 5 or less in each subject area, so we're not talking about large numbers of students. Okay, now I have 3 different graphs for each of the subject areas, and I'll quickly explain what they show, and then certainly you can look over them in more detail when you have a moment. The first graph for each subject area has the total number of test takers, so you can see how many students were actually sitting for the test during the past 5 years. And then we have the percentage of test takers passing. For instance, you saw the 1% decrease in the language and composition. It went from 100 only to 99. There was only 1 student who didn't pass last year. In literature and composition, there was no change. And then the third graph for each subject area is the breakdown of 3s, 4s, and 5s for those passing scores. So again, I do have those for math, science, social studies, world language, and fine arts, which I will save everybody hopefully a little bit of squinting at those graphs. If you would like to, they're certainly available for you to review later. So now we get to my favorite segment of the report, which is the college admissions segment. For the class of 2014, all of the statistics were up, of course, except for the percentage of students actually accepted to colleges, and that was only down by 2%. Granted, we had a larger class size, and we saw overall from colleges some lower acceptance rates, which will account for that, but the average GPA was up, the SAT and ACT scores were up, and the number of apps, I hope at some point it will eventually start heading downward, but it is still creeping back up again. On average, Ridge students submitted 6.3 applications each. In terms of those applications, we've got our hot and our not list. Some of the schools on the left saw a great percentage change in interest. So you'll see schools like Rutgers on there, which was up something like 30 apps from the year before. So 2 years, we've got more kids applying to Rutgers than I thought we had maxed out. But frankly, at that point, if you look at the graph on the audience, you probably know what I mean. But that's still up there. More local schools, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York schools are definitely represented more heavily on those hot lists. Cornell is on there. The applications are up. You'll also see in a few slides that the acceptances were up. And University of Michigan, a lot of more students have been placing that on their list, I suspect because of their admissions policy. They're early action and they don't compete necessarily with if the student's applying early decision or restricted early action anywhere else. So they can submit that application early to a top tier school and get a rolling admission response back relatively quickly, regardless as to whether or not they have their early decision or early action responses back yet either. Some of the larger schools, we've seen some decreased interest. I'm not entirely sure as to whether it's because of simply the size of the school, the fact that maybe students are looking for smaller schools, or because of the application type. A lot of the larger schools are rolling admissions, and students may not, and have their own applications. Some students may not wish to put the effort into it, to actually go through and fill out that application until they know the results of their early decision or their early action applications first, since it's not, a lot of them are not Common App and just sort of clicking over to another school anymore. So those used to be some of our safety schools for students, and it could just be that the students, when they see what they've got on their plate in terms of early action and early decision admissions, aren't finding the need to apply to them anymore. We are still conducting instant decision and interview days proudly. Interview days are just that. The school will come to Ridge and interview the student at Ridge's campus, as opposed to making arrangements with the student to meet elsewhere, either on campus if it's a school that's a little bit further away, or at a Starbucks or at the student's home or something like that. Instant decision day, the rep will come to Ridge and offer an on-the-spot admissions decision to interested students. And the counselors help to vet the students in advance, so we're really not setting anyone up for great failure in this. We know they've met certain criteria to earn a spot with the rep on that day in any regard. In both cases, events such as these improve Ridge's visibility in the college community, and it helps to increase our rapport between the representatives. We seem to enjoy coming and enjoy our students, and we certainly enjoy having them. We had the same number of colleges and universities participate as in 2012-13. We had a few more students participate, though. And in terms of the results, 52 admissions offers were made on the spot for instant decision days. Seton Hall awarded our students on the spot $888,000 over the course of 4 years, right then and there. They're the only school of that group that I know of that does the scholarships also on the spot as well. So that's definitely a plus in many, many regards. So we continue to see if any other schools are interested year after year in doing the instant decision or the interview days, and we're happy to host as many as we possibly can. Some college comparisons with categories of colleges. Again, I'll remind you that the categories here are defined by Naviance. They don't give a broad definition, but some examples that they give of schools in each of the category. For instance, most competitive would be Amherst, Tufts, Duke, Stanford, schools like that. Highly competitive, they're using examples such as Boston University, Lehigh, Lafayette. Very competitive, American, Drexel, University of Connecticut. Competitive, they define, use some schools as examples, East Stroudsburg, Ryder, Fairleigh Dickinson, and some familiar, less competitive schools would be Caldwell College, Centenary College, Johnson and Wales. More schools have joined the Common App, so you'll see the number of Common App students using the Common App that were accepted is up, and as are the numbers in the vast majority of the categories. This slide many of you have been waiting for, the Ivy League results. 30 members of the class of 2014 gained admission to Ivy League schools, which was up from 13 in 2013. So we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of students accepted and obviously therefore attended the Ivy League. I had given you a sneak peek of some of the matriculation data at the beginning, but here is a little bit more detail for that. Matriculation is the formal process of entering a college or university or category thereof, and essentially it's the type of school the student was accepted to and chose to attend. So the four-year colleges are those that award bachelor's degrees. All of the instant decision day schools we just looked at are four-year colleges, and the vast majority, 89.3% of Ridge graduates matriculated to a four-year school in 2014. Two-year colleges are those that award certificates and/or associate's degrees. Most typically, they're community colleges like RVCC. Just under 6% of graduates from Ridge last year matriculated to a two-year college. We had a whole 4 students matriculate to a non-U.S. college last year, which was 0.9%. And the other post-secondary category includes technical or trade schools such as DeVry Institute, as well as pre-college programs for students who may need another year of study in some way, shape, or form before they enter colleges. We had just under 4% go directly into the job market or into military, would take a year off, or simply tell us that they were undecided as of June 2014 what they would be doing in the fall. In terms of matriculation by state, it sort of reflects those hot or not schools. The local New Jersey, as well as some of the nearby surrounding states, are where most of our students ended up, and the percentages, of course, decreased from there. So this is just some general college admissions news from the reports that we get from publications such as College Board, as well as the National Association for College Admissions Counseling, and things of that sort. Globally, they're reporting that applications are up. No surprise, we continue to see that trend. The Common App does make it easier for students to submit more applications. The acceptance rates are down. Again, no surprise, I believe I mentioned that last year as well. The more students that are applying, the more that they can sort of pick and choose who they are actually going to accept, so therefore the rates go down. And their yields are mixed, and the yield is how many students actually how many students are offered admission and then actually choose to attend there at the very end. And I'll talk about yields in a few slides as well. There are, or have been, an increase in test optional schools. Locally, Montclair is the first public university in New Jersey to adopt the test optional policy. Other schools, Temple, Old Dominion, there are more schools adding themselves to that list. There's always a caution when they add themselves to that list. Are they adding them flat out saying, hey, you don't have to send us your scores, or are they saying, you don't have to send us your scores if your GPA is X, Y, or Z, or if you submit us this other writing portfolio or something of the sort. So there's a lot more of those little footnotes that you'll see if you look on fairtest.org, which is the website with the schools that are test optional. Fewer colleges have reported going to their wait lists, and some are not even utilizing them at all, for a combination of reasons. More students are being accepted early. They're able to get a good portion of their crop, either early decision or early action, depending on their policy. And also because when they do that, the yields also rise, so the chances of actually getting in off the wait list are actually declining, and some colleges have decided, we'll accept more than we need to, hope that they don't all accept, and if they do, they'll find room for them, as opposed to using the waitlist method. The National Association for College Admissions Counseling every year puts together top factors in admissions that the colleges report. It will come as no surprise that the top factors in order that they use are grades in the college prep courses. And when they utilize the term college prep, it's not necessarily the same as our use of college prep. College prep courses mean any CP, AP, or honors course in terms of ridge speed. Rigor of curriculum is number 2, standardized test scores are number 3, and GPA is number 4 in terms of what they look for in an application. For New Jersey schools, the applications overall to New Jersey schools are up, not just for Ridge. The tuition in New Jersey rose between 1.3 and 4.7% for the 2014-15 school year. That puts Rutgers, New Brunswick, as an example, as $13,800 for tuition and fees for the school year. Ramapo and the College of St. Elizabeth had held their tuition steady, however, for 2014-15. And the general news story was that they're really trying to encourage more students to stay in the state. On average, according to NACAC, colleges accepted nearly 2/3 of applicants. So our Ridge averages for acceptances were higher than all the national averages. With that said, we still have some top schools who have pretty low acceptance rates. Cornell of the Ivies is the highest, it typically is. This past year is at 14%, ranging all the way down to non-Ivy, but competitive Stanford that only took 5% of their applicants overall. So when I said before that the yields were mixed, we've had some colleges see a record high yield, or record high students saying, yes, I will go there if you took me and I'll go there. Harvard, Yale, Penn, and Stanford all had record yields, high yields, I should say. Northwestern, University of Chicago had record lows. Princeton and Brown report drops in yields more in 2014 and 15 as well. So what are the trends specifically at Ridge? We've talked about sort of the global trends. We found more and more confusing terminology. We found schools with friendly deadlines and flexible deadlines, and they're test flexible. What on earth does that mean? Well, sometimes your guess is as good as ours because it means something different to every school. What one school calls test friendly or test optional, or we'd really like you to have your application in by this date, but it's not really due till November 1st. It means something different everywhere. So the counselors have been busily looking up the different suggestions, or trying to figure out the emails that they're getting from the different admissions offices to advise students as best as possible. For instance, we got an email from Notre Dame that said that they moved from an early action to a restrictive early action policy, meaning that you can't apply early action anywhere else anymore. It says, for specific information, visit our website where we've outlined the policy. The deadline remains November 1st, but we encourage students to have applications submitted by mid-September. Well, we've just started school in mid-September, so naturally a student sees that and they start to panic, and the counselor has to sort of, you're still taking the applications, you're not at any more of an advantage or disadvantage if the deadline is still November 1st. So we're helping students navigate there. We have over 90% of our senior class that has a November 1st or earlier deadline. And we're not even talking about rolling schools, we're just talking about firm deadlines. So as soon as that initial schedule crunch is over at the beginning of the year, our counselors are meeting with students 4 or 5 a day, going over their senior packet, making sure that there are no other changes, that they're comfortable with what they need to do, and then they are writing those letters like little machines until the November 1st deadline kind of comes and goes, and then it eases up and they can focus on some of the other ones. Yeah, we're a victim of our own school calendar in some of those ways, but we continue to hear from colleges that no matter how many times they put out the message that they'll gladly accept applications in August, they understand that colleges, or high schools especially in the Northeast, aren't going to be able to get them out in August with all the supporting paperwork. So those are our earlier recommended deadlines. Colleges, we are also seeing are either requesting or even flat out accepting fewer letters of recommendation. Sort of behind the scenes, we've always had specific reps that told us, you know, you don't read letters of recommendation, so if that's what's holding up sending your application, just go ahead and send it, basically. And that's Rutgers, that's Penn State, that's Clemson, larger schools such as that. High Point apparently emailed a good portion of their students and flat out told them, we're not reading any recommendations you send. So they're not even beating around the bush anymore. They're telling the counselor that they're sending that message right out to the students as well. Naviance is actually, colleges are able to prevent you from uploading more than one letter to Naviance in some cases. Some schools will say 0 minimum, 10 max. Therefore, you can upload as many as you want. Some will say 1 minimum, 1 max. So it's typically the counselor letter that gets sent in that given situation. And if the student wants otherwise, then they work it out with the counselor and the teacher. But they're now using technology to really curb the number of documents that they are receiving. And as I had mentioned before, the Ridge applications are up to the New Jersey schools. We're seeing students not necessarily wanting maybe to stay closer to home, but finding it necessary to have a safety either in terms of location and or cost, with financial aid being so up in the air, especially as of late. The actual matriculation is also up, as you saw a few slides back, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still a lower percentage than students going out of state. I'm happy to take any questions from the board. It is a lot of data.
I'm wondering if guidance has considered certain key data by surveying the students, I guess when they're juniors, as to whether or not they were receiving private SAT preparation, whether it's group or individual, so that we get a sense of what the percentage is year over year.
Year over year, I'm starting to do that this year. We have it in the past, and certainly it's only the students who voluntarily reply that we're going to get the information for. But we put together an end of the year survey for students, and that is one of the things we've talked about adding to it.
I have a couple of questions from the beginning of the
Okay.
One I think is a really simple one. When you give the snapshot of where the class of 2014 went,
Yes.
does it include the students in the community-based life skills program whose goal is to go right to graduation, not necessarily college?
No, because the most part they are not signed up with Naviance.
Okay, so
And that's how we gather our data.
And then the one part that jumped out at me at SAT testing trends is it looks like we had a 10% drop in Ridge students taking the SATs from 2011-12 to 2012-13.
2011-12 to 2012-13.
It's like,
Yes,
is it displacement because they're taking the ACT?
I believe so.
Okay.
Certainly I have no firm way to back that up, but I do believe that. That was the year where we started not only method test prep, but the diagnostic tests became very popular, where a lot of families would, whether they sent them to a private organization or they took the test first to see which one they're more suited toward, and then just focused on that one, as opposed to prior to that, a lot of the students would sit for one of each, and then sort of focus their energies. So they're not duplicating. Yeah, they're not duplicating efforts as much, which makes sense. Yes.
I noticed when we were looking at the AP test that there was an increase in the number of students taking the AP test over the last couple of years. I think it was 2012 was 94, and the last couple of years it's like in the 50s.
Yes.
So is there?
I don't know, Dr. Brennan or Mr. Saya, do you know? Do you
The
mind?
incentive,
Ah,
so the course with the incentive had the most impact.
our scores were actually up
Yeah,
significantly in that course.
right, I know that, but it was the number,
Yep,
when you say incentive, you mean not having to take.
correct. Yep.
Okay, that shouldn't
I'll pick a school like Princeton. Do they suggest the SAT versus the ACT? The rich student wants to apply to Princeton. Do they have a choice in which state has to take?
Yes. Most schools, I haven't seen, quite frankly, any school that has said, we'll only take the SAT or we'll only take the ACT. They typically accept both, and they'll differ in whether they want you to send all the scores of any tests that you've taken or whether they just want you to send your best. Depends on the particular college's policy on that piece of it. But I've not come across any that were specific to one over another.
I don't remember which slide it was, but you said last, you were showing you did better than previous years.
Mhm.
And you were there for a bit. So is there anything you know that we did well, so we make sure we
We
do
do it again. Well, short of the majority of the actual scores going up, that certainly helps our students no matter where they're applying, whether that is a direct correlation to our students getting in or not. I'm sorry?
I thought the SATs didn't go up.
No, the SATs, yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me go back. Sorry, yeah, flipping the screens.
I just want to make sure you can more of whatever we did right.
Right, our reading scores went up 9 points. Our math scores went up 14 points overall, and our writing scores went up 12 points. So between that and our students demonstrating that the AP scores and things of that sort over the course of the 12th grade year, we had a good class.
Any feedback from the principal or any feedback from one
I've certainly asked the counselors. I mean, overall, they felt that last year's class was stronger, but could they put a finger on what it was that was stronger about them? Not particularly, nothing that they could quantify, just sort of, I guess, a gut feeling on that piece. And the feedback we get from the reps is typically positive. It was positive last year, but it was positive 2 years ago also. So it wasn't that anyone was pointing out to us specifically, oh, this particular crop of students had X, Y, or Z, and anything different. So the only thing that I can really see in terms of the numbers, the GPA was a little bit higher, and the test scores were a little bit higher.
On the classical charts, the first slide on the margin sheets, the bottom line percentage accepted. I think I appreciate what it's trying to say, which is that of all the 2,800 and whatever applications that were sent out by Cambridge students, 64% of them were positive response.
Correct.
As opposed to,
As opposed to deny or,
well, no, that's not what it is.
oh,
When you look at the 444 students,
right.
and we know from one of your very first slides, 96.something percent of your college. I guess I'm interested in why we feel that that number of is significant.
That, I don't think has any more significance than any of the other particular numbers on here. It's just one of those summary numbers that Naviance does spit out for us, so I do include it on the slide. Certainly, if you think of anything else, feel free to email me. Thank you.
Okay, we're now up to item number 10, which is public forum on agenda items. If anyone has anything they would like to say about any topics that are on the agenda, please come forward and give us your name and address, please, and write it on the clipboard. Okay, nobody's down. Okay. We're up to committee reports. First, we have finance. We have items 1 through 5 on finance. Would someone like to make a motion? Susan, thank you. Would someone like to second that? Karen? Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the finance items?
We did not have a meeting.
Right, there was no finance meeting. Yeah. Right, so there's no committee report. These are just a couple items that need to get voted on. Any questions or comments on the items? No? Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes?
Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we're up to personnel. There are items 1 through 15 under personnel. Bev, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to move items 1 through 15.
And Linda?
And then once we're done,
second.
I have a-
Okay. Linda seconding. Should we vote on the items first and then do the report? Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the items? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes?
Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes. Thank you. Bev, would you like to give a committee report?
Yes, the Personnel Committee met last on October 17th. You should have all received minutes, which I am going to highlight now. We have our initial meeting to meet with the BTAA leadership regarding negotiating their contract, which is due for renewal. Our meeting is going to be November 18th, and Elaine Pucel is going to be leading the negotiations team. A position for us to think about for budget season coming up is right now there are stipend positions at each of the schools for a school webmaster. In addition, there's a special education webmaster and a media specialist webmaster. If you add up all the stipends together, it is costing our district almost $35,000 a year. There is an idea on the table to take away all these individual stipend positions and add one district information officer who would be responsible for updating all websites as well as social media for the district. They would cover all the same work, but with a overall, a similar approach because there'd be one person managing all of the work. It could be a part-time position with no benefits, so it probably would not cost our district any more money. So just something to think about. We learned that the superintendent contract, which is going to be up for renewal, needs to be approved by the sitting board, so we're going to wait until January to discuss this further. There was lots of detailed information regarding a proposed special education interventionist position, and Mrs. O'Connell will be at our next board meeting in 2 weeks to discuss that further with all of you. Happy to say that for the statement of assurances for CUSAC, all of the personnel areas received points. And finally, the committee was notified of a request for an additional stipend position for the production of Bye Bye Birdie at Ridge High School this year. The 4th assistant position would allow us to have a live orchestra pit during the play, and it would be self-funded by revenue from the play, so the committee unanimously supports this addition. Does anyone have any questions? That's it.
Okay, thank you. I don't think curriculum has met.
Curriculum's meeting this coming Friday.
Good to know. That's actually. Okay, policy, there's one item. Would someone like to make a motion for item 1? Susan? Somebody would like to second it? Karen? Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Furman?
Yes?
Mrs. Warner?
Yes.
Mrs. Brett?
Yes.
Mrs. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, nothing else for policy,
We met today.
Right.
We'll report out next week.
Okay, thank you. Advocacy Committee met last Monday. We met with the PTO presidents, and most of the conversation was taken up talking about park testing, and Nick gave a very good overview of the history behind the whole testing phenomenon and the history of what's come before in the state and how we got to where we are, I think, which I think people found very useful. He shared with the PTO presidents that most recent letter from the Department of Education that was attached, I think, to weekly notes, and I think I might have attached it to the advocacy minutes again also, for you to look at. This was just more clarification on the fact that districts have to do park testing and have to test all the students. We heard, many districts when we were at the school board's convention asking about park testing, and the Department of Education people were there, and it was the same message, I think, from everybody. In terms of the obligations for the districts to do it. The PTO presidents expressed concerns, which we all share, about the lost instructional time at the high schools specifically because of the park testing schedule, but at all the schools. We talked about, they were going to talk to, I think they had a conference call with Save Our Schools New Jersey on Wednesday. Some of them did. And they are talking about doing a letter writing campaign, and they're going to be organizing some letters, and they'll keep us updated on what they're doing. We explained to them that Susan Carlson and Lisa Winter work for Save Our Schools New Jersey, and people get a little confused because they were former Board of Education members in our district, and so we just wanted to make it clear to everybody that that's their role now, for that organization. And we have to keep the board not separate, but we have to. We have our own individual feelings about park, but as a board, we have to do what the state says we have to do, and we as a board aren't going to take an advocacy role in the same way that Save Our Schools New Jersey would. So I guess we had that conversation. We told them we'd be glad to fact check any letters that they're writing, for factual information and things like that. But we're not going to organize the letter writing on this particular topic. Let's see what else. Oh, Nick gave an update about school security to the PTO presidents, and he shared with them the school security report that just came out. That he went to a session, I think Elaine, I don't know if anyone else went to it. Did you go to it, Linda? At school boards about school security. So it's a new report with recommendations that are trying to be cost effective because they know the districts are all in the same situation financially. We told the PTO presidents about our discussion at our last meeting here, the finance recommendation to look at the entranceways at the elementary schools and see if there's something that we could do that's cost effective there. I think that was about it for the advocacy meeting. We spent a lot of time talking about park. Any questions about advocacy or comments? Okay, we are up to liaison reports.
Yeah, Municipal Alliance meeting was canceled this week, so we didn't meet.
Thank you. Okay, we're up to public forum on other than agenda items. If anyone has anything they'd like to say on any topic, you can come up to the podium and tell us your name. Write your name on the clipboard, please.
Jen Korn, K-O-R-N. I'm at 23 Woodstone Road here in Basking Ridge. And I'm glad you mentioned the park testing, because that's why I'm here, and I'm probably the only one here. Because I got the letter, and I have children in grammar school, middle school, and high school. And it seems to me that the park testing is taking away, like I can go on vacation for 10 days with my kids and they'll learn more on vacation with me than they're going to do if they're missing 10 full days of school. That's 2 weeks of school for testing that really I could care less about. That really is not benefiting our children at all. We have a great school system here in Basking Ridge. It's one reason I live here. We pay some, good amount of taxes, not too many, but I was very, very happy with the school. And now, I mean, compared to when my daughter, who's a sophomore, and I have a daughter in 2nd grade, I mean, it seems ridiculous what they're doing with this Common Core, and then the part testing just is like, I don't even know what to do or who to talk to, or it just seems like a waste of our time and the money. We have great teachers in this town. They're not even allowed to teach because we're teaching to this dopey test that doesn't seem to, I want to know why my kids are being like the guinea pigs for this in our town where we have good schools. And I feel like it's undercutting everything we can do here. So I just wanted to say that I don't know where to go or who's organizing the big protest against it, and people are too busy working in this town to protest anything. So, I'm not sure where to go. This is the only I can think of is coming to talk to the Board of Ed, because I know everyone's hands are tied to the state, but I don't know how much state funding we lose if we don't want to do it, or how much federal funding, like we lose all our funding, or what. So I know I just read that you said we can't pull our kids from these tests, but I'm not sure what else can be done in order to, make it right. It's a lot of school time. I mean, didn't we just have a whole thing with our calendar about getting school to be longer, and now we're missing 10 full days of school for something that doesn't really impact or have a good impact, I don't think, on the education of the kids in Basking Ridge. So that's just what I was thinking. And I guess you'll get feedback, or it just seems to me like a big waste of our time and money to be putting all this energy into something that, in the end, is really taking away the education that we're already getting in this town. Thank you.
Let's wait till everyone finishes the public comment and then we can respond.
Good evening, Laura Bagg, 15 Pitney Court. I didn't plan on speaking tonight about anything. I just wanted to attend and hear the updates of the board. But since Jen got up and mentioned Park, and it was mentioned here, I just wanted to say one thing regarding the advocacy group. And that is that I'm hard-pressed to think of any other reason that this body here would advocate on behalf of our students other than to step up and push back on park testing. Thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? I'm going to respond to the park comments. First of all, in terms of the advocacy committee, we have done letter writing from our committee about the unfunded mandate aspect of park testing and things last year. So we do advocate for the students. Specifically, the part that I said we weren't going to organize the protest was in terms of the opt-out. The state says we have to administer the testing, and we are not going to, as a body, encourage some kind of mass opt-out. So that's what I was referring to in terms of us not advocating. We're getting the addresses for all the legislators to the PTO presidents for their letter writing campaign, and we're glad to work with them in that capacity. So I just wanted to clarify that. Nick, did you have anything you want to say?
Sure. So just with respect to the park testing and the amount of time that it's going to take, we recognize that it is a significant amount of time that the students are going to be involved in the testing. And to clarify something that the state talked about with respect to the administration of the test, they talked about the ability for districts to stack tests, meaning that they would allow students to take more than one section of the test on a given school day, which could possibly allow for some alternative schedules that might allow us to administer the test in a more compressed time frame. So that's not going to be something that we're looking to try to accomplish in year one, because we need to get through it once to see that we can experience it, understand it, troubleshoot it, but it's definitely our goal after we get through the first round of this to try to do it in a more compressed way if that's possible. So we need to deal with the logistics of actually having to go through this the first time, and that my hope is that in the future we can manage the time that it takes to get the testing done. Understanding that there's always going to be, as long as the statutes are the way they are, and the No Child Left Behind requirements exist, that the states have to have a testing program, there's going to be some time lost in order to administer the state testing program, regardless of whether it's the NJASC or the HSPA. There is an increased amount of time necessary as long as the state is using this particular park protocol, but certainly it is our goal, and we do recognize that it's time that we would like to try to minimize the impact of, and it is our goal to try to reduce that after we get through the first go-around, to make sure that we can.
Mike?
I'm not sure what is going on. We have local control being lost, and if you just look at the state alone, we have very good schools, average schools, and poor schools, and yet one size fits all. We're being asked to go through the same motions. I'm not sure what's going on. I think there's a lot more political movement and politics involved in this than there is in education. If it is the law, we have to follow it. I, for one, would vote to repeal it. So that's my opinion.
Anyone else have any comments? Karen?
I'm kind of agree with Mike, but I'm a little concerned because there's only so much that we can do. We are bound by the law. But I think there's things that we can do locally, and I'm going to bring up a specific topic that someone approached me in the grocery store about today. We have teachers in the high school that have already spent 3 full class periods preparing practice park testing. That worries me. If we have to administer the test, absolutely we should administer the test, but I think we should stand by our curriculum and what we need to teach our kids because we feel that it's important and because we feel that we're going to stick with the curriculum that works best for Bernards Township schools. So I hope we can find a balance, knowing that we are bound by this legislation. Preeti?
I have more of a question. If we get more laptops, would it reduce the number of testing time that we have? I think.
We've talked about that, whether the limiting factor is the number of Chromebooks or the limiting factor to how many fast we can test, how many kids we can test at once is the facilities. And I think you guys concluded it's the actual number of rooms and proctors and yeah, because if you put the entire school and try to test them at once, there's just not enough space. And
we don't have, so the Chromebooks are not the reason. It's very limiting.
It's really a combination of factors. It's computers, it's broadband, it's staffing, it's enough testing rooms and spaces when you create small groups. You know, on a given day at the high school, there are a lot of students that might be in large spaces for study hall or lunch. If you were to take all those students at the same time and try to put them in separate classrooms and then also need small group settings for accommodating groups, you wouldn't have enough classroom space. So the physical limitations of the building are one issue, in addition to the fact if you strain the network with 400 students trying to log in and take a test at the same time versus 1,200 students trying to log in at the same time, there's a big difference there in the capacity of the school's infrastructure in terms of the broadband and the network to be able to process all that test taking at the same time. These are all variables that contribute to how efficiently we can get the testing done. And as I said, I really think we need to get through this once to look to see how each of those pieces comes into play.
I mean, at school boards, there were some larger districts that they can't figure out how they're going to do it. And they're like, one of them was talking to the local community college about maybe putting the students in buildings there, you know, to do some of it. It's a bigger problem for a bigger school building. Yeah.
And just to note, in case it was implied we weren't doing anything to advocate for our grave concerns about this whole process, several of us attended a county school board meeting and had a dialogue with the president of the State Board of Education, and we itemized out specific concerns, and we have an ongoing dialogue with him right now, trying to get some of the details done. We went to the state school board convention. We attended numerous sessions on the topic. It seems like most districts in the state have the same concerns as us. Not that it helps any of us right now. We tried to give feedback to the State Commissioner of Education, but it was very clear the open question and answer sessions were pre-programmed questions from a school board staff member. We couldn't even ask him questions. They don't want to hear it. Go ahead.
I actually, I went to a Garden State Coalition of Schools session at the school board's convention, and I did have the opportunity to address the commissioner, and I did. I didn't get a very sympathetic response, I guess is all I will say. I did mention that I was really concerned about the loss of instructional time. And, you know, he basically said, you guys have to figure it out, so. But I did try.
Also, on our next board meeting on November 24th, this is going to be a topic. There'll be a presentation about park as well as other things. So make sure that you come back for that. Okay. So we have to know. Okay, we're now up to board forum. The first item is a board goal update. We had talked about 3 board goals, and one of them we've been working on in policy over the last couple of meetings, which was the committee norms, which is pretty much finished up or almost wrapped up. The second one was coming up with not a procedure, a plan for developing board priorities. And so we have had discussions about how we don't want to just respond to things as they come up. Things have a tendency to just come out of nowhere in any given year. Like last year, drugs and alcohol, all of a sudden was like the big thing. We also want to be proactive and come up with our own priorities and have a full board way of deciding what those are going to be. We've kind of tried this in the past where different committees came with their priorities, and we just never have come up with a cohesive system for discussing them as a full board and coming up with what we want our board priorities to be. So I think we still are going to use the committees to discuss the goals if it falls under their domain, but we want to try to come up with a way that we can all have input, even if we're not on that committee. One idea that I heard at one of the trainings I went to was to have everyone just give 3 post-its to, you know, we collect 3 post-its from each of you about what are 3 things that are a priority that you would like to see the board look at in the next year. And then we could kind of assign them to committees depending on, you know, what the topic is. That way, if you are not on that committee, you can still send the topic there, and then they would bring it back to discuss as a full board. So the full board will participate in the conversations. That was one idea. I don't know what ideas you guys have of how we could do it. Anyone have any? Mike, did you want to say anything or no? No, you're just laughing? Oh, okay. I mean, we kind of need a starting point. I think some committees, if we did the post-it thing, will end up with more topics probably than others. But that's okay. And then they could discuss them, and you know, the administrators on the committee could, you know, give feedback of what they thought about them, and then we could bring it back to the board. that sound reasonable? Okay, so we'll try that and see what happens. We had talked about having a schedule, but I think if we just come into a discussion during board forum without having put thought into it, it's not going to be very productive. I think it would be better if the ideas were discussed in the committee first. Okay, we'll try that. And then our third goal was developing a new board member mentoring and training, so which we're working on. Nick is compiling all the documents, and we have some new board training this week. So I think we're just going to continue to work on that as the year goes on, since we have new board members to train. So I think we're doing okay. We're addressing our 3 board goals. Sure. You can start the training before you're sworn in. I actually had all of mine before I started because it was uncontested, so I was able to. Yeah, John is able to. Yeah. Any other board forum items? Yes.
I was pleased to see the proposed list of board meetings for the upcoming year. And I just want to note that you all should have the paper in front of you. There are 4 highlighted meetings that are going to take place at our 4 elementary schools. One of the useful breakout sessions at the school board convention in Atlantic City was called Get the Board Out of Your Board Meeting, where a district in Long Valley rotates their public meetings to be held at each of their different facilities. The building principal serves as the host of the meeting, and part of the agenda is to highlight something new or different or wonderful that's going on at that particular building. So I'm pleased to see that in the upcoming year we'll get a chance to hold meetings at all 4 of our elementary schools. I believe there's going to be one here at Annan this year to see the new foods room as well.
This is crazy.
I'd like to see the entrance, because we're talking about security. They could want to call.
Let's hold it closer.
So, we've been talking about the entrances of some of these elementary schools, just so we can have the principals point out what they may be thinking during that time. I'd like to see that as part of the individual.
Susan, did you have something? No? Okay. Anyone else have anything for board forum?
If I could just add to that, that this is a draft, and we need to officially adopt these when we do our reorg in January. So, just as a little footnote, it is a draft, and if something gets tweaked here, we'll finalize it when we have reorg.
Okay. Nothing else for board forum? So we are up to adjournment. Would someone like to make a motion? Maybe Susan.